Welcome to Full Time to Freelance, where we share the untold stories of former 9-to-5ers who have traded so-called job security for reclaiming their time, their sanity, creative control, and moreover, truly loving what they do now. Today, I'm joined by Mark, a seasoned expert in sales or revenue enablement, which is the world that I was from back in the day before I changed tracks. Mark combines teaching expertise with deep sales knowledge to help sales teams sharpen their skills. From articulating complex sales frameworks to sharing his own career transitions, Mark offers valuable insights for anyone considering the leap into freelancing or starting up their own business. We also get to unpack a great abbreviation, which is MEDDPICC. Yeah, we'll get into that in just a bit. Whether you're considering the jump into freelance or looking to enhance your sales approach, Mark delivers some outstanding insights with some practical wisdom from someone that's been there and now doing what he loves. Thank you so much for your time. It's really good to have you here. Can you firstly tell me your name, where you live, and what you do, please?
Okay, let me see if I can get all those three. So first of all, my name is Mark, Garrett Hayes. I live in Barcelona. I'm from Ireland. I'm here 2.5 years. There's a backstory to that. And I currently work with organizations, specifically sales teams, through training and coaching in helping, I would say, quite specifically software sales teams in things like MEDDPICC, strategic account planning, and so on.
Okay, right. So MEDDPICC, I know about because I'm from the same world as you. But just unpack that for me, Mark. You know what is MEDDPICC? You're clearly not a physician. Well, you might be a physician actually, but I know for a fact that you're not a physician. So MEDDPICC, I'd be thinking, wait a minute. So are you medical? But what is MEDDPICC when it comes to software sales, please?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was at a networking event in Barcelona this morning. And I began to mention the word MEDDPICC or its variation MEDDPICC, and someone said, "Oh, I'm in medical sales too," or they said something along the lines of medical devices, and I said, "No, it's just an acronym." So, to answer the question, MEDDPICC or MEDDPICC, there are variations of that. Is simply an acronym for metrics, economic buyer, decision process, decision criteria. Procurement or paperwork or process, if you will, and then identified pain, champion, and competition. Now, if you're still with me after all of that, that literally is an acronym which reminds us of what those letters play in terms of a role when qualifying deals. So very simplistically, let's just say we're selling some software to, let's say, a defense contractor, government, maybe a healthcare group. When it's complex and multi-threaded, in plain English, we've got multiple people involved. We want to make sure there's not just a budget, but there's a real need that we're trying to solve. So that acronym keeps us on course, helps us to remind ourselves that we've got to speak to the right people, ask the right questions, connect what we do to a pain, not just a need to do something. But something that's strategic and solves a problem, and that we're talking to the right people or champions and so on. So each of those letters plays a role in that acronym. And if you talk to anyone in software sales, they'll know what MEDDPICC or MEDDPICC means.
Absolutely. So again, I know what that means, but just for anyone that's watching or listening, it'll be good just to kind of unpack that. And you've done that in a very beautiful way. So thank you for that, Mark. Yeah, I think you've done really well. I'll give you the gold star for today.
Thank you.
Every day's a school day. Mark eloquently breaks down MEDDPICC, MEDDPICC, and what that is and why it's there. This structured approach helps salespeople navigate complex sales. MEDDPICC or variations of it is typically used in big software as a service deals or SaaS deals, for example, ensuring the sellers speak with the right buyer stakeholders at the right time, to ask the correct targeted questions, and to connect their solutions to strategic business problems. Candidly, Mark really knows his MEDDPICC eggs. But how did Mark develop this specialized knowledge?
Well, if you'd asked me maybe 10 years ago what MEDDPICC or MEDDPICC is or was, I'd have said it's something to do with medicine, but it's not. It's an acronym. But to go back in time, I find that there are three distinct paths which have converged and led me to doing what I'm doing now. First of all, I was always interested in working with people from different backgrounds. So I began actually in hotel management because that got me to travel the world. I worked for Disney, Sheraton, etc., but it really wasn't scratching the itch. I also then had an interest in technology, and so the World Wide Web was emerging, but I hadn't yet a sales string to my bow. And so I liked the idea of helping people, training. My mother's father and my father's father were both teachers, so there's definitely something in the blood.
In the blood.
That means that I really get a kick out of, seeing the lights go on in people's eyes when they get something. And so that need for helping people by explaining things, clarifying things, maybe demystifying things, always played a strong role in what I find is valuable for me to do with my time. So as I began to think about technology, and not being a geek in no way, but I began to think, how can I get into this in more of a way without having a formal qualification? There really wasn't. So I began to do some qualifications and did that. I did a Microsoft certified database administrator way back in the day when that carried weight. I'm not sure if it still does. Microsoft certified trainer and so on. And so I loved explaining technology to people, but there was still a niche missing. And I was offered almost accidentally a role in sales. And I thought, well, why not? So I began to see it as a way to perhaps work with people to understand why they need things, what problems that's solving, and then see if I could bring my expertise to bear. So solution selling. And so I did that. But then I found I was doing too much of that and not enough time helping people. So I would say the strongest of those three paths has always been the need to feel I'm learning something, sharing something, and teaching something. And that brought me back to thinking, well, could I converge or could I make those three things work in a way? And this thing called enablement emerged. Now, if you say enablement, people might say, what is that? I don't know. Think of sales training, but like a fancy version of sales training where you're thinking about not just training or transferring information, but you're actually looking at data, looking at metrics, looking at systems, and thinking, how can we help salespeople who are at the front line in any business get what they need to help the people they need to buy in the way they need to buy it. And so luckily, this thing called sales enablement emerged, and I found myself then drawn towards that, did a coaching qualification, which is very helpful because when you're working with clients, you're not just teaching, but you're listening and asking questions to validate concepts and helping them find their own way, not just giving them a solution which they have imposed on them. Right. And so that helped me realize, hey, I could do this for lots of people. So I was tempted out of industry, working for myself. I then went back in and then came back out again. And so right now I am, which by the way isn't very uncommon. People often get a kick out of going in to refresh their skills in industry, coming back out, working for themselves and applying what they've learned. So I did that. And today in 2025, I'm loving what I do. It has its challenges, which we'll get into, but enablement really is the art of helping people using all the systems and technology and giving people the means to sell to the people that need exactly what they do or offer.
That's a great level of insight that you've given around almost being if I were to dumb it right the way down, being a corporate teacher, but the class that you're teaching are a class of salespeople. Now, you're not teaching them how to sell. You're giving them what they need to be able to hit off any of those metrics that you talked about in MEDDPICC or MEDDPICC at each time to make sure that whoever they're selling whatever software to, that person, the person who's buying it, let's call them the buyer, they know that salesperson is competent, ready, understands what they're selling, but also understands the buyer's industry as well and understands the buyer's pain points. Is that right?
That's true. So I don't think any salesperson has to become an expert in the buyer's industry or products, but they do need to become an expert in the pain that they're solving.
Right.
And to really step into that. So to do what I had to do, I couldn't just work with salespeople. I had to take on a BDR role, which basically means you're hammering the phones, chasing for prospects, as we call them, qualifying them correctly, and then passing them to someone who's an AE and can then convert that to an actual sales conversation. So I did that role. And then
a BDR is a BDR is a business development representative, and an AE is an account executive. Is that right?
Okay, so they're acronyms which people will, if they're in sales, particularly in tech sales, will be familiar with. So, for example, Microsoft will have people who are trying to sell Microsoft solutions. They will have BDRs who do all the kind of outbound prospecting. You'll have AEs who do all the kind of more developmental conversations, qualifying further. And having done that, I then was offered the chance to become a sales manager, which is stressful. And then that's the tipping point, which made me realize, actually, I like this, but I'd like to be working more with salespeople again and sales leaders. So I got to really have my cake, chew it, regurgitate it, and then go back to what I was doing, which is really working with salespeople. So I know what it's like to be on the phones. I know what it's like to be trying to close advance opportunities, close opportunities, advance opportunities, close opportunities, week in, week out. And I know what it's like to lead a sales team, good and bad. And I think that's what gives me the credibility as well as ability to work with the people I work with.
Mark describes sales or revenue enablement as a sophisticated approach to empowering sales teams using specific data points, metrics, and systems to support customers through their complex buying journey. To build credibility in this field, Mark deliberately experienced sales from every angle you could think of. Working as a business development representative, making cold calls, serving as an account executive, closing deals, and even managing sales teams to become a more effective enablement professional. This hands-on experience in the trenches proved invaluable, giving him authentic insights into the challenges that salespeople face daily and allowing him to provide practical, tested solutions in his training deliveries. All of this means that salespeople have nowhere to hide when Mark's delivering training.
Most people don't leave school thinking, I want to be a freelancer, and then I want to be an employee, and then I want to do it again. And I think most lives, most careers unfold, and it's where, as they say, luck is what happens when preparation meets skill. And there are different variations of that phrase. But I think I never set out to be freelance. I'm not even sure that term was in use when I came out of school.
Sure.
But I think there's always a fascination in most people's minds. What is it like to work for myself? A lot of people dip their toes, might find they don't like it, but I would rather have done that than regret not having tried it. And so I would say to anyone listening, it may not be a sudden series of events which makes you decide or makes you curious about working for yourself. But at some point, something will happen where you think, you know what, I wonder if I could do this myself. I wonder if I could start this thing myself. I wonder if I could build this myself. And I think these days, because we've access to so many channels, to so many stories on LinkedIn, on YouTube, it's easy to be inspired. We can pick up books and listen to podcasts like yours and go, oh my goodness, there are people just like me doing the kinds of things that I would like to do. Why don't I give it a try? So I would say there was no real switch for me in my mind. It was just something which happened, which caused something else to happen, which gave rise to a thought. And so if I look back, I would say, would I make the same choices again? Perhaps not. But if I didn't do the things I did, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now. And if I really, really wanted to, I could go in and take a job, but I'd really, really not rather do that now. Because I've made all the mistakes I want to make.
Right, okay. Yeah, I've heard that phrase. You couldn't go back into industry once you've become a contractor, once you work for yourself.
Well, I don't know. I mean, let me challenge that. I think you can to some degree, but and there are pros and cons to doing it. One of the pros is that you can take the entrepreneur mindset and go into a company, and I think you're far more valuable to a company when you've lost something or you've screwed up something. And I think it depends on the culture where you live, but particularly in the States, that's perfectly acceptable. In fact, when I've hired salespeople, I have looked for people who've made a mistake, they've lost money, they've started a business, they screwed up, but they got back up. And I think that's far more valuable to a company than someone who just comes straight from school and doesn't try things. So give me the person that's at least tried to work for themselves or had something on the side, and then taken that lesson or those lessons and then made themselves a far more valuable employee. And I've had recruiters say to me, when we've had people in who've lost something, they've had skin in the game, they've lost something, they've been burned, but they try again. One, they're more resilient. Two, they're more creative because they've got to get out of a problem quicker than someone who's never done that. And three, they're more likely to see things from an employer's perspective, not just a what can you do for me employee perspective. And I think that's valuable to anyone.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think that's fascinating, and we can dig into that kind of all day long. So here's the thing. So you've gone from full-time to freelance. You've suggested that, anyone who's kind of thinking about it, make the leap, read books, do all that stuff. What three things would you say to someone that's kind of on the fence, on the cusp, or on that ledge, ready to make that leap, or maybe not ready to make that leap, but they want to know a little bit more? What three things would you say that they should do?
Well, first of all is to step off. Don't jump off.
Okay.
Because if you step off rather than jump off, you're more in control. Think of it like, as they say, because I did a lot of sailing a number of years ago, and the phrase was, I think, you step up into a life raft, or you step down into one. You don't jump in and then try to get into a boat. In other words, have something perhaps alongside, to use the sailing analogy, that you can step into when you're ready, as opposed to panicking and then jumping in. So it's sometimes, I think sometimes the best time to think about starting a business is when your job is going well, not the case of what the hell do I do now? I'm being let go. So I think it's okay to start right now thinking about that itch, if you have one, and saying, not waiting till things are going wrong or going off kilter and panicking and then doing things with undue haste, because you might start the wrong thing. You might take financial risks which you can't undo. So the other thing I would say is involve loved ones. I didn't, and that was a really bad idea, and it does cause problems, and that can play havoc with not just your family life but your mental health. And you're putting massive stress on you, particularly if people who should be consulted aren't being consulted. I know plenty of people who've made that mistake, and they've gone off half-cocked into something, and then they haven't involved their partner, and that person feels, one, distrusted, or two, perhaps not valued. And again, that is just not something that I would want to repeat. And I think the third thing is you've got to give yourself a chance. It's easy to be discouraged. It's easy to tune into the I can't do it channel. I prefer to tune into the channel of if it's to be, it's up to me. There are always people who will tell you you can't do it. There will always be people who tell you it won't work. There will always be people who tell you it's just not worth the risk. It's funny how the people who say those things are often the people, or more often than not, the people who've never done it and kind of wish they had. So be very careful about how you take advice and whom you take it from. I like to think of there being multiple doors, and we're not going into, a corridor with only, it's like going through, when you come off a plane, you go through passport control, you can't come back. The good news is you can come back, and often it makes sense to come back at different points. So I know plenty of people who've started off actually in self-employment, joined a company. Some people have gone into the private sector, then the public sector. And think of Mark Carney, the freshly elected leader of the Liberal Party in Canada. He was in the Bank of England for a while, if you recall, if for people who are perhaps a bit younger than me, governor of the Bank of England. And he went into the private sector. Mats, who's the new Chancellor of Germany has done work in the private sector, and now he's leading government in Germany. So there are plenty of examples of people who've done in every way you can think of it, whether it's going into a family business, then into their own business, or whether it's public sector into private sector. I wouldn't get stuck on a recipe. Make up your own recipe. The ingredients are the things around you, your life, your preferences, your goals, your desires. Thankfully, we're long past that age when we were really boxed in by what our parents did or what my parents could afford to do and whether they could send me to school. Thankfully, we live in the age of information. We have at our hands, the internet, we've got AI. So there's an abundance of options, of configurations that will make it work for you. So I would say, think of it like a series of doors. They will never close in your face, but it's up to you to open them. It's up to you to say, which doors am I going to go through? What's on the other side? I may not know till I go through. And if I don't like what I see, I can come back and I can take what I've learned and then apply that to the next position. It's always a series of increments. There's no straight line. And I think that's the thing. I think often what people fear is that they don't know what's at the end of the corridor. Well, guess what? I don't either, and I still don't know. As long as you open the next door, see something, make a decision with what you find, and then go to the next door, that's all you can do. Just keep on opening doors, and then the path will unfold in a way that works for you.
Mark offers 3 key pieces of advice for anyone looking to change from full-time to freelance. First, step off, don't jump off. I love that one. Transition gradually rather than making impulsive leaps, ideally starting your planning when things are going well, not during a crisis. Secondly, involve loved ones in major career decisions to protect relationships and mental health. That's a really good one. Thirdly, be selective about whose advice you take on board, embracing a "if it's to be, it's up to me" mindset rather than listening to naysayers. Interestingly, Mark sees career paths not as a one-way street, but as a series of doors that you can move fluidly between, be it self-employment and also corporate roles. I'd be curious to understand your perspective. Do let me know in the comments. And that's it for this week on Full-Time to Freelance, where dreams become reality, one brave decision at a time. If you'd like to share your story to inspire others who are thinking of taking the leap from full-time to freelance, do let me know in the comments, and one of the team will reach out and get in touch. We'll be back again soon with some more stories of transformation of those that have switched from full-time to freedom. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.